So I finished around last year, August. And when I finished studying, I realized something. Number one, the public education system was failing us immensely. So as we speak, my nated engineering certificates haven't been printed yet. When I came to the school office, the college office, the reception, and I remember just being tempted to go through the previous pages because this is a giant book. And when I go through this book, I see all these names who are still waiting for their certificates. And
No.
this goes as far back as 2018.
Today, I'm interviewing a young South African who has already garnered an audience of over 75,000 subscribers here on YouTube and a viewership of almost 8.5 million. He's collaborated with countless commentators here in the political space and has done all of this by the age of just 20 years old. The one, the only Sama Sambit. But who is Sama behind the camera? And what are his experiences as a member of the youth born post-1994 regarding education, youth leadership, and political conflict? And how have these personal experiences shaped him into the person that he is today? Let's find out. So I have been watching you for over a year now, and you are just truly unapologetic about who you are and, what your views are. I read the Can You Scoop article that came out in March where it said that you opened up your YouTube channel about 6 years ago, but you really became really popular last year. Did you always want to do political commentary, or, was that just something that fell into your lap?
Well, thanks for, mentioning you've been watching me for quite some time, really. The honor is mine. I feel quite honored knowing that young women watch me and go further to do what you do, starting your own workshops and starting Youth Boost Initiative. That's truly honorable. Just wanted to mention that in the beginning before I forgot to mention it later
Thank
on.
you.
And when I started YouTube about 6 years ago, it wasn't in my mind that I wanted to do political commentary or challenge politicians or do any of that, really. There was no reality in my head that connected me and the political world, none whatsoever. I was a literal child, and I decided to start a YouTube channel where I filmed myself gaming.
Oh,
And then that didn't work. And I had to study more to finish my 7th grade. Then I just left it. It just sat there for years. And then I came back when I was in college. So it's quite some time. And I said, I'm going to use my YouTube channel to improve my public speaking skills. I'm studying engineering, and I'll get further within the space if I improve in my communication, because negotiations and deals are just as important as my technical skills. When you look at my earliest videos, they have nothing to do with politics. They have everything to do with youth matters and companies such as Nesfus. In fact, my first YouTube video was about Nesfus. But if you want to be more recent, and all you'll see are these 3, 4 longest 7-minute videos of this kid, this 16-year-old who's just trying to improve his public speaking skills, then later decided he wanted to relate that improvement with talking on current affairs. I was uploading maybe once a month because I wasn't a consistent YouTuber. I'm just doing this for training. Then I said, maybe I should start uploading weekly. Maybe I should start uploading daily. And overall, along the way, it grew into me. And now here I am today, which is an absolute honor.
Yeah, I was wondering, because you are 20 this year, correct?
Yep, the
And
big 2-0.
yeah, and you've managed to accomplish so much. You've been on the Truth Report, you've been on State of the Nation, you've collaborated with so many impactful personalities in the political space, and you've done it at such a young age. How did you get
Thank
to
you.
that step where you started collaborating with big online personalities?
So as my subscriber count is increasing, and 19-year-old me is wondering why people like watching a 19-year-old talk on politics, I receive a call. And this call is from someone who works at Truth Report. And she says she's a huge fan of the content I make. She first reaches out to me on email. So I see this email and I look at it and I go, wow, well, that's nice. Truth Report sounds like a fantastic thing. Bear in mind, at this time, I've never heard of Truth Report in my life. I don't know what Truth Report is. I don't know how the logo looks like, and I have no idea what they do there or why they're interested in it. And then I see this email, and this email was rather interesting. I read it and it talks about how much they commend my work and they'd actually like to work with me sometime. And then I got consumed by college studies, so I forgot about this email. So then she does a follow-up email, and that follow-up email says, "Hey, we're just following up on the offer we made you earlier. So we just like to, work with you a little bit." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, they did send me an email." So then I finally respond. But in the meantime, they're enjoying their holidays. And while everyone else was enjoying their holidays, I was reading and responding to these emails, these many emails, one of them being truth reports. And I said, "Sure thing." And they go, "Well, could you please share your contact details? Maybe, we could talk quicker on WhatsApp." And I sent them my number. And then after I sent her my number, I received this nice long voice note from the agent who reached out to me. And she explained everything to me. She explained what they do, sent me a link to the channel. And then this time, the CEO called me. So we had this very nice 15-minute chat. And in this 15-minute chat, he lays out the entire blueprint. He tells me why Truth Report was started. He tells me why people should care about it and what makes it different from mainstream media. So all
Mm.
these thoughts were going through my head. What makes this different from SABC? I don't want to be part of something like that. I don't want to be part of a news company that reads some ANC press statement and then calls it journalism. We have enough of
No,
those guys. We have more than enough of those. Okay. I don't need to be part of this new mushroom springing out of mainstream media.
you want
But
something different.
exactly, exactly.
Mm.
And then along the way, in that same conversation, he actually explains it perfectly. He explains why they're so different from actual mainstream media. And through that conversation, he was able to convince me and my gut that this was the right direction. I won't be regretting it later regarding the fact that I contributed content of any sort to them. So
Mm.
then I joined them. So I was like you, right? Young, started the YouTube channel, just doing your own thing, finding what works, finding your own thumbnail style, still trying to be unique, still trying to do your own thing, and trying to do YouTube because it's you, not doing it because any niche is popular. And I'd say that's about it. I'd say that's how I really joined the Truth Report. It wasn't something complicated. It was just a call, which started with an email, and then a call, and then all of a sudden I was making videos with them.
That's awesome. No, because I wanted to say that I started my YouTube content creation journey at the beginning of this month. So I'm still in the beginning stages.
Well,
And
congratulations on that. I
thank
mean,
you
in a
so
few
much.
months, you've already gotten 800 plus subscribers. I couldn't do that. So well done.
It's only been a month, so I'm still trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. But I really try to target, and I see it in my analytics across different platforms, how my primary audience are those below the age of 30, predominantly 18 to 24. But I see
Okay.
that you have garnered a lot of also a mature audience as well. I mean, both my mom and my dad also watch you. They love your content.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What an honor that is.
But you mentioned that you're studying, and you're studying engineering. Is there anything career-wise? You're doing a lot of interviews, you're doing a lot of political commentary, and you're studying engineering. Is there a link? Do you ever think to maybe in the future use the two together, or is it you being able to follow two separate passions?
Well, I did study, and my course finished about almost a year ago. So I finished around last year, August. And when I finished studying, I realized something. Number one, the public education system was failing us immensely. So as we speak, my nated engineering certificates haven't been printed yet. When I came to the school office, the college office, the reception, and requested for this, they asked me what to show them. I showed them everything that was needed to be shown: ID, student card, proof of residence, whatever they wanted. And then in the end, they said, "Perfect. All right, write your name here. And then you're all good, kid." So then I wrote my name, wrote my student card. And I remember just being tempted to go through the previous pages because this is a giant book. So then I flipped the pages because my mind is like a cat's. Curiosity kills the cat. And when I go through this book, I see all these names of all these students who came before me, who wrote their names on that paper, who are still waiting for their certificates. And
No.
this goes as far back as 2018.
How is that
Then I'm
legal?
gonna get it. Well, that's a good question. It's not, but it's just like prostitution in South Africa. It's illegal, but our politicians do it too. It's just one of those. So with the education system, the same thing applies. All this is illegal. In my latest exam by the institution, the Department of Education, my last level engineering native series exam, they had literally printed out the wrong curriculum for us to write. They gave us a new curriculum to study, updated curriculum. They gave us the old one to write. And when everyone opened those exam papers, we all exchanged these looks of panic in our eyes because this meant two things. Number one, we were the ones who were fooled, and this is a mistake on the Department of Education. Or number two, it was our teachers who were mistaken and have mistakenly taught us the wrong curriculum. You see, the new curriculum wasn't so different from the old curriculum, but it hit a lot of us hard. So I was very disappointed I didn't get a great mark in that. You know, when you get a great mark in that, you separate yourself from a lot of the competition. But then we move on from that, and then I started YouTubing because I had to do something. There I was. I legally finished my N6, and I was still waiting for my certificates and internship. And that's when I decided to focus on YouTube because I was doing something. I wasn't idle. I mean, I'd pride myself on reading, but that was about it. I wanted to do something else. So what you notice is from last year, June, July, my volume when it came to uploading boosted like this. It rapidly boosted. So I adapted quicker. I started understanding YouTube quicker and content creation quicker. My thumbnails started to change. I started to gain more confidence. I started talking longer. There are people with better resources. There are people who speak better than you. There are people who act better. There are people who can move crowds better than you. You have all these rules rigged against you. And you have all these YouTube channels doing the same thing you're doing. And because of that, you must still find a way to get your own audience and still get funded and still somehow find a way to make YouTube your main thing.
There's nothing wrong with it. You've come extremely far. You know, a lot of people
Thank
would love to be where you are now. You've grown exponentially over the last year.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that. It wasn't easy at all. I
Mm.
did have to go to the public TVET college because my family could not afford to get me to a university to study what I wanted to study. So along the way, my entire life was not about me picking what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, when my family found a way, I did it. My whole childhood was, listen, kid, this is what we got. This is what we can do. Find a way to make it work. So I applied that same mindset to YouTube.
But you know, with the audience that you've garnered, I read your Kenya Scoop article, and it spoke about how you have a very loyal audience that always comes back for more content, but you have gotten some backlash. You know, you are known as the South African chief of sarcasm. But is there anything
Yeah.
that comes to mind that people have said to you that kind of boxes you into a certain political leaning?
Well, I always liked to view myself as non-politically aligned.
Mm.
So I always understood why people could never really put me into a category or something because I criticize everybody. I mean, today I would talk about why Trump was right about applying refugee status for the minority communities, including Afrikaners, which the mainstream media tried so hard to convince you was just for Afrikaners. And then the next day, there I was criticizing Trump about the Epstein files. So people would think, yeah, which direction is he heading? And the truth of the matter was,
You're
I
just
was never
honest.
politically, exactly. I was
Just
never
honest.
politically aligned. The reason why I do what I do is because I want the best for South Africa. So when I first got the chief of sarcasm, it took a while for me to actually put the emotions aside and not be hurt by it. Because everybody was thinking of me as this critic who always criticizes government and is never happy. And then there I was with the thick skin going, well, hey, whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to do what I do best, expose the truth. And here you have it. So till this day, YouTube, which I owe a lot of credit to, has actually allowed me to express my ability to promote free speech and my ability to express my opinion. Because I always knew when I did it, there was a South African watching out there who agreed with what I said.
Mm.
So maybe my family member didn't agree with what I said. Maybe my brother didn't agree with the fact that I supported Trump over Kamala Harris. Maybe my siblings or my closest friends wouldn't agree with the fact that I was always criticizing the ANC and the extremist EFF. Maybe they didn't like that. And that did hurt me for a while because I realized that as I was expressing who I really was, a lot of people were turning on me. But then I realized one thing. The moment everybody likes you, the moment everybody does try to like you, the moment you do try to impress everybody, you know you're doing something wrong.
Mhm. You
We'll,
can't
we'll
please
all fall
everybody.
short. Exactly, you can't. You can't. What you should do as a human being is you should always fight for what you believe is right. As I do this, I believe I am being a true patriot for South Africa, fighting for the truth, not because I am advocating for the total destruction of our great nation with such a rich history. What I am doing is I am advocating for the best of South Africa.
Well, the only thing that you can do is really stay true to who you are. And, you mention about people having certain expectations on who you should support politically and the political messages that you should align with. We are seeing it with a lot of the youth now, and I speak about this a lot on my channel, where it's a level of learned helplessness, where some members of the youth feel like there is just too many political parties. They don't know which one. And then on the other hand, you get some who feel like even if they do participate, nothing changes. What are your perspectives on that?
Well, first of all, the idea that nothing changes when you participate was a part of a propaganda campaign that was done by the ANC in the mid 2000s to convince you that they would never lose power. The propaganda campaign that was called Nothing Will Change If You Participated started with the youth uprisings in the late 90s and 2000s when the schools started being underfunded and students were actually getting angry. They were still learning Afrikaans, which was a priority for them for some strange reason. The schools were still underfunded. They were still using books from 10 years ago. The classrooms were still overcrowded. The teachers were still overworked and underpaid. So there was a lot of the youth uprising. There was also a civil war in the ANC. The ANC Youth League hated each other, and they also hated the ANC. The leader of the ANC Youth League at the time was none other than Julius Malema. He was the leader of the ANC Youth League, and he immensely hated what the ANC were doing. It was just 30 years ago, Michaela, that we had everything right. We voted for the ANC because at that time, that was the best party you could vote for. The reason why the ANC got into power was a lot of white South Africans voted for them and believed in what they would do as well. That's why the ANC won. So along this whole way, the youth is getting more and more disconnected from reality. The youth was getting disconnected from reality as far as the 80s, when a lot of youth members were getting killed by Winnie Mandela's gang called the Mandela United Football Club. The murder of Stompie, the murder of every other individual who was younger than 18, who did their best to stand up to political powers, who were killed by the government or terrorist organizations that were against the apartheid regime at the time. Another thing that contributed to nothing will change if the youth partakes in politics was the fact that the youth were always looked down upon when we spoke on politics. Sama Sambit existing in YouTube didn't always happen. That wasn't the case back then. So that previous generation saw it as youth has nothing to do with politics. And that mindset was carried towards the future generations. That's why, as we speak, there are still very few individuals, especially the young ones, particularly young South Africans, within the 18-year-old to the 25-year-old demographic who refuse to talk on politics, either because they're too scared because of the propaganda they've heard and what could happen to them, or they've been intimidated by these big news outlets who have much more resources than them. But along the way, that seems to be changing because individuals like you and myself are starting to say Gen Z should actually consider partaking in politics. Because as much as we don't want to realize it, we're the adults now. And as much as, yes, I watched your video. So as much as we also don't want to realize it, we're the ones who have to make the decisions. And if we don't, we're going to suffer until we're kokos and matalas.
Yeah. You know, you speak on the narratives of mainstream media, and you are known to go against the grain of mainstream media. You've mentioned it plenty
Yeah.
times. But when we look at the media literacy crisis that a lot of the youth is experiencing now, and I've spoken about it quite a bit across platforms, we are seeing a lot of youth more hesitant to look at independent sources of information as opposed to, you know, the usual News 24, Newsroom Africa, ENCA. Why do you think they are more hesitant to look at independent sources?
Because the state tells you they're the best source of the news. If you spent your whole life watching the SABC tells you what's going on, if a random YouTuber came around telling you don't watch that and don't vote ANC, your whole reality changes because that means the ideology you followed from childhood is wrong. Trying to convince someone that what they've believed for so long is wrong is very hard. What we've seen throughout the years is that people have little by little gained more and more confidence in independent news coverage because they themselves have noticed that either mainstream media doesn't give them the full story or gives them their side of the story. Is mainstream media as impartial as they say they are? The fact that independent coverage has been introduced is pure evidence that it is not. The fact that there are this many people who are subscribed to me, willing to hear what I have to say every day over what Dan Corder has to say on his daily show at ENCA every Tuesday at 7 p.m. tells you a lot about what mainstream media says versus what independent news sources say. We've
Mm.
went from we're going to tell the people what's important as news companies to we're going to tell them what makes us more money. You'll never hear a news company tell you about gender-based violence if not everyone is talking about it. The fact that they're covering it is evidence that everybody is talking about it. They only started covering individuals like me when we started going viral. They never said, hey, there's independent news outlets on YouTube. We highly suggest you watch them because it is always important that South Africans remain informed from all directions so that we remain as unbiased, as independent, and as impartial as possible. Instead of saying and being the democratic nation they claim to be, going, look, we try to be impartial, but to prove we are impartial, we highly recommend you watch our critics as well. Because not all critics are bad critics. Some critics want to see the best for you. Some critics are just people who don't like you. We recommend you watch the constructive critics because we learn from them as well.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned Dan Corder
Yeah,
in relation to the people who feel like, you know, voting doesn't do anything. There's too many parties, and so they've given up. You also have people who are very loud and proud about their political leanings as well. We
yeah,
have people like Dan Corder and Peter Kriel and even Ronaldo Gous that you collaborate all the time
yeah.
with. Do you think that there is a line that sometimes get crossed, or do you feel like freedom to express your political leaning should have no bounds?
Well, South Africa is a nation of free speech. So, as an individual, if you support a specific political party, if you have a message to bring out with the genuine intention of wanting the better or the better version of a society, then there shouldn't be a problem with whatever line you're politically in. The problem comes when you use these political organizations, when you pretend to politically lean to these organizations, either because you want some form of benefit from society or they've paid you to do so, even though you don't actually agree with them.
Yeah.
So if you genuinely believe the ANC is the key to a better South Africa, you're an ANC MP and you started a YouTube channel because the municipal elections are coming soon, then you are entitled to your own opinion. And we can sit and chat about why you believe so. And I can sit and chat about why I don't agree with that. But if you do this for nothing but financial gain, or you do this out of desperation, that's where the problem comes. Because you have traded your authenticity for rent by these organizations. Ronaldo Gous and I can sit in the same room and I can talk to him about why I don't like biltong. I actually like lamb biltong better. I don't like beef biltong. And he can tell me about why he likes beef biltong over lamb biltong. But we can both agree that we both like biltong and we'd like to
Mm.
see better biltong. It's the same thing with South Africa. All of us can sit in a desk, can sit by a desk in a boardroom and talk about why he doesn't like the ANC, why she likes the ANC, why he likes the FF plus, why he supports the EFF. All the reasons are the same. We want to better South Africa. The problem comes when you genuinely don't want to better South Africa, and when it comes to be the truth about the fact that you are just doing this because it benefits you in some way.
Look, I'm a big believer that if you are someone who is in the political space or you're a political commentator or even a politician, you know, with the values that you promote and the events that you go to, you just got to walk the talk at the end of the day. If you
Yeah,
are a staunch supporter of communism, live a communist lifestyle. If you are someone who
exactly.
supports the private sector, invest in the private sector, you know, walk the talk. But when we look
Exactly.
at young people, going back to those who are very loud and proud, a lot of young people who are loud and proud at public universities, we see a lot of the SRC members who are part of political youth leagues. And as someone who went to a private institution, I was an SRC, the academic SRC for the 12 campuses at the institution. And I noticed not only
Wow,
concerns,
fantastic.
thank you, but it wasn't just issues around work readiness, but there was also a lot of politics. And we see that especially at public universities. Do you feel like these members, these SRC members, do they support the students, or do you feel like they do still have some, are they still influenced by the political parties that they are part of?
SRC groups are like any organizations in society. Within a group, you'll have the people that genuinely believe in the movement and believe this is the key to a better society, either a better society or maintaining the standard we have. Within that society, just like any other, you'll have the a-holes, you'll have the ones who are in there just because of the benefits. When I was in my own college, I was in the student representative council as well. It was weird because I was the only guy who spoke English, not because I was the only one who knew how, but everyone else spoke Zulu and Tswana. They didn't want to speak
Mm.
English. In some of their words, it was the white man's language. They just didn't like white people, so they didn't speak the language that was recognized by most of the world. So when they saw this black guy speak, it was very weird. They saw that this guy is different from the moment they laid their eyes on me. Because every time you had a representative from the SRC complain about why we haven't given enough EFF shirts this month, I would be the one that said, but the students still need to make a choice. Don't tell them to wear it. Put the shirts out there and let them decide whether they should wear it or not, or whether they'd like us to order some DA shirts or ANC shirts or FF Plus shirts or MK Party shirts or ACDP shirts in the long run. Because the aim is not to make the student politically aligned. The aim is to make the student as involved in governmental problems and solutions as they should be involved in the future. That's the aim. So, guys, let's not lose the plot here. It is not our duty to make the student want to vote for this specific party. It is our duty to make sure they are as involved in the decisions of the nation as they should be.
Don't tell
And they
them what
hate
to think, tell them to what to think about.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's you said it perfectly. Maybe you said it even better than I do. Give them the options and let them decide. Right? We went from that to students giving out EFF shirts in the universities. And if you didn't support the EFF, you were a racist. Now you've got white students supporting the EFF, even though they know but all about what's happening. That's the result.
Yeah. But you know, we've spoken a lot about governmental politics, but you don't just do governmental politics. You also speak a lot on social issues, and you speak a lot
Yeah.
about the war between the sexes and how currently we are seeing a lot of content that is over sexualized. We see a lot of young men who, you know, are really struggling. Do you have any advice? Because I can't really speak on that, but do you have any advice for
Sure.
young men out there?
As a young man living in South Africa, you are subject to many issues. You're a victim of poverty if you were born in the racial demographics that has majority poverty stricken people. You were born into alcoholism because in South Africa, we've got a lot of South Africans under the influence of alcoholism. You don't choose these. You may have been born into a family that's deeply alcoholic. You may have been born into a religious family, and that's basically where all your core values lie on. As a young man in South Africa, you need to ask yourself this question. What I'm doing now, will this make me a percentage better than I was yesterday? Every time you wake up in the morning, you need to ask yourself this question. What am I going to do today that makes me better than yesterday? I've generally never heard of a young man who devotes himself to something every single day, is consistent about it, and then fails in the end in life. That never happens. The universe is very fair. God is a very fair being. God genuinely rewards those who are consistent. As a young man, you must make sure you are not liable to any outer influence that will make sure to hinder your progress in life. Every day after you ask yourself, what did I do today that made me a little better than yesterday? You must also ask yourself, what did I go through today that I wouldn't want my future self to fall under? No matter what mood I'm in, no matter how I'm feeling, as a man, I need to make sure I do what I have to do to make sure that my family is well fed in the future. If you're a quitter and you're watching what I'm saying right now in this video, I genuinely cannot help you. God himself cannot help you. You can't help a quitter because a quitter is not going to do anything. If you're someone who wants to do something and is willing to write down a plan and how to achieve that something in the next few months, then I can help you. If you pray for rain, you must also expect the mud. If you pray for rain, you must also deal with the floods. You cannot expect everything to be a stone through. You cannot expect it to be sunshine and rainbows. There is a solution in every problem, just as much as there is an opportunity in every depressive situation. That's how you should always think about something, not only as a young man, but as a young South African as well in general.
Yeah, it was very inspiring words.
Thank you.
But yeah,
Thank you.
the reason why I wanted to ask you is because you speak a lot about governmental politics, but you also seem very passionate about social politics as well. But in closing off, I do just want to talk
Yeah.
about how, as young South Africans, and this relates to social politics, like you said at the beginning, we
Yeah.
are the next generation of leaders. The next 20, 30 years, we are going to be where the big heads are at. And
Yep.
do you feel like young people in South Africa, do you think they are ready for leadership roles, or do you think there are things that still need to be addressed before that can happen?
You're in 2026, where you can ask an AI about the manifestos of the top 4 political parties. And by the time you go to bed, you will understand why each and every political party exists and which one you'd rather prefer because of the opinions you have. That's the age you live in. So if young South Africans really know what's good for them, then they'd be more invested into reading, into studying, and understanding what's really going on in their political world. You're going to have to start learning about politics. You're going to have to start learning about what makes a good political party. Who are the people that fund a political party and who are the people that vote for it? You need to learn about all these roles in society if you really want to stand at a level where you can say, this is the key to a better South Africa. We're ready to be the next leaders. And you can do this like this. It's not like back then where you had to have years of experience and so forth. If that was the case, you and I wouldn't have existed and no one would be watching us. Experience doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the fact that you're aware of what's going on and you want a better South Africa. Experience comes along the way. So my number one thing is, if we truly say we're ready to be the next leaders of South Africa, we must be able to sit in a position where we want to learn about why this is bad, why this is good, and what's the way forward.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the questions I feel like up until this point have been a little bit on the easier side. So I decided to end off with a bit of a bang.
All right.
What are
Okay.
top 3 things that you think the youth can address right now, today, without assistance from government programs or intervention from the private sector? 3 things that they can address themselves right now.
Most of our youth don't even know the answer to this, because most of the day they don't have time to sit down and think for themselves. They're always consumed by the latest TikTok dance trend or the latest Big Brother Mzansi episode. They never leave their minds to sit and think alone. No, we must always be engaged. We must fill our minds with the drug called dopamine. We always inject ourselves with this constant instant gratification. That the moment we actually sit down for about 5 to 10 minutes and think about what would I address tonight, we wouldn't be able to answer that question. But I can, because I've been sitting alone for some time. Number 1 is entrepreneurship. You can talk about qualifications all you want, but there's a reason why youth unemployment is above 60%. So as much as you want to educate yourself, you need to understand the fact that that age of high employment in a nation doesn't work anymore. So if you can't make money by being employed anymore, you need to start doing your own things. So do that. That's the number one thing. Address unemployment. What can I do to solve my unemployment? Don't always look at the government. The government sucks. Yes, they do. Very bad. They're the reason most of us don't have a job. But then, are you going to spend all day looking at that, even though you know it's true? Or are you going to spend all day going, all right, the government sucks. I'm going to be screwed if I don't have an idea right now. What can I do to get myself out of here? Number one. Number two, we need to be more aware about what's happening in society. You can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. The number one step in solving a problem is by identifying that problem first. The government is a problem. How did I come up to that solution? Well, I read about the ANC. I know about the ANC's history. I know about the members in the ANC. I watched the Madanga Commission. Yes, that's a thing. It happens to be investigating not whether the ANC is corrupt or not. It investigates how corrupt they got. That's how bad things are in South Africa. Number three is also very important. Consistency. As a young person, the third thing you need to address is the fact that a lot of our young people just don't have hope anymore. You need to be able to put yourself in a situation where it doesn't matter how you feel. If you really want to, step one, be independent. Step two, be aware of what's going on. Your mood doesn't matter. It's you who wants to be aware of the situation. So it's you's going to have to go and educate yourself. It's you who has to be consistent, because if you're not consistent, then forget about these two steps. Those are the three things we need to address amongst our youth. Because if you're not consistent, you're going to be lazy. And when you're lazy, you can't be independent and you can't be aware of what's going on. So you're going to turn to other alternatives, gangsterism, alcoholism, hence the high rates of alcoholism and substance abuse in our youth, because they feel like they have nowhere to turn to. Those are the three things that I would tell any young person watching this right now to do as soon as this video ends. They literally need to do something. Like, they need to go switch off the lights if they have to and sit down in their room and think, how do I achieve those three things?
Yeah. And it's also about having important role models, maybe not just in your own life, but people who are in a similar field to yours that you look up to. I think it's also
Yeah,
very, very important to help with the consistency.
of course, of course. There's always someone you can look up to who genuinely will inspire you to do more. I mean, what you're doing, someone has done it before. Maybe they haven't, but someone's done something similar. So you can always learn from them. What do they do? Why do people listen to me for like 2 seconds and then skip away? Then why do people watch her for like 10 minutes and then they feel like they consider skipping away, but they just don't? They just want to finish the rest of the episode. I need to learn that.
Yeah. No, 100%. I really feel like you were a role model of mine when I
Wow.
first
Thank you so
started.
much.
In youth commentary in South Africa, you were an inspiration to me to just go ahead with it, just get started. And so that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to invite you today to have a bit of a discussion with you. And I'm
Thanks
so
so
glad that
much.
I finally got to hear your perspectives, hearing about your journey in education, your journey in political commentary. And I'm excited to see where, the next year leads you.
Wow. I'd say the same for you, actually. I actually really find it so nice and inspiring that we're having all these young people starting to search in political commentary. Because when I started, I was like this one 19-year-old in this group of old people who cared about politics. And I was the only one because no one else did, or they were too afraid to do it. And then when I started, you started seeing these other channels pop up talking about the situations in South Africa's youth. And what you notice is sometimes it just takes that little ant to move forward for the rest of the pack to move. So when we continue, if we can continue moving this direction, then I think the youth of South Africa will do pretty good in the next few years. And thanks for the honor again. The honor is all mine. I'm in your show after all.
It's a pleasure. It was really insightful to me. And I was so excited for this. Like, really, really excited being able to speak to someone that I've been looking up to for such a long time now. And I'm glad that I could have you on. And there you have it, the Sama Sambit, someone who is often marked as a controversial figure, but doesn't actually just have one political leaning and just wants the best for the youth of South Africa. So if you like this type of content and you want to see more interviews like this, you can hit the thumbs up button down below. And if you want to learn more about the Youth Boost Initiative, you can scan this QR code or click on the link in my description, because on this channel, we don't just talk about issues, we bring full solutions to actively solve them. But for now, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.